All right, let's dive into the world of Escanor. This sign, he really flips the script on what we think we know about power. We got a lot to work with here. His character profile, full power level breakdowns, even a script detailing his early life, and a timeline of his most impactful moments. And believe me, there are a lot of impactful moments with Escanor.
Yeah, that's what I find so fascinating about Escanor, honestly. He just forces you to reconsider that,
Yeah.
that classic Saiyan archetype. He's got that raw power, sure, but his motivations are just so intensely personal.
Yeah.
Like they go against the grain. Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to the very beginning. I mean, we're talking a power level of 10,000 at birth. Just an insane amount of power for a newborn.
Oh, yeah.
And that power surge, it proves fatal for his mother. And King Vegeta, well, he's sensing this potential threat.
Right.
So he makes the decision to exile Escanor to this really remote planet. I mean, talk about a rough start to life, right?
It's a move that's just completely rooted in fear, Right. But it's like he inadvertently created the perfect training ground for what Escanor would become. Alone, driven by anger, nothing to do but just hone his abilities.
Yeah, and speaking of being driven by anger,
Mm-hmm.
we have the destruction of planet Vegeta. Our script, actually, it shows us a young Escanor witnessing Frieza actually executing his father. I mean, it's just this incredibly vivid scene, and you can't help but think, how does that level of trauma shape a child?
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the root of that deep-seated hatred for Frieza right there. That's got to be the driving force behind so many of his, his more destructive choices.
Speaking of destruction, the script, it details him conquering the planet he was exiled to as a kid, basically becoming this mini tyrant, taking out anyone who stands in his way. I mean, do you think this is where his leadership style, or maybe a lack of it, starts to form?
It's got to be formative, right? I mean, he learns early on that power equals control. And anyone in his way is totally expendable. It just reinforces that whole, that survival of the fittest mentality. It's so Saiyan.
Well, so he escapes Frieza, right? After the planet explodes and just goes on this planet-smashing rampage, world after world. Is it all just blind rage at that point, or is there is there some strategy behind all the chaos?
I mean, it's easy to just see it as pure chaos.
Right.
But Escanor is not stupid, right? He is incredibly resourceful. And he's cunning, too. There are actually theories that suggest these attacks were calculated, maybe to weaken Frieza's grip on the galaxy, deny him resources, potential allies.
Okay, so there's a level of forethought there that you don't necessarily expect from someone who's just, fueled by rage.
Exactly. And this leads us to, I think, a pivotal moment. His meeting with Daiko, another powerful Saiyan who escaped to Vegeta. This is where it gets interesting, right? This is the start of an alliance. That's about way more than just hating Frieza. Right. They become this unstoppable force, shaking down civilizations for resources, strategically amassing power for that inevitable showdown.
It's like a Saiyan version of planetary pirates, right? Shared history, burning desire for revenge, and they're not afraid to throw their weight around to get what they want.
It flips the script, right? It's not about individual strength anymore. It's about strategic partnerships, long-term planning, understanding how to use your power to just completely disrupt the existing order.
And you see that exponential power growth. By the end of Dragon Ball Super, his alter ego form reaches, get this, 10.526 octillion.
Whoa.
How do you even begin to understand that kind of power?
Yeah, it defies, easy understanding. You're not just talking about raw strength at that point. We're talking about warping reality, controlling energy on a cosmic scale. Escanor basically becomes this force of nature capable of reshaping the entire universe.
And it makes you wonder, right? Can all that power, all that rage be channeled into something other than destruction? Is there any good in Escanor, or is he just destined to be this force of chaos?
It's the question that haunts his entire journey. And that's what keeps his story so compelling,
I mean, it's like teaming up with Daiko really unlocks something in Escanor, And I'm not just talking about adding their power levels together. It's more like their shared rage, their shared experiences. It created something way more powerful.
Yeah, totally. It really speaks to the idea that Saiyan strength, it's not just physical, it's emotional. It's tied to those bonds and shared history.
And you see that when they finally arrive on Earth. I mean, their entrance, it's not exactly subtle. Escanor is rocking a power level of 5 million and immediately goes head-to-head with Goku and Vegeta. It's like he's testing them, trying to prove he's the strongest.
Right. He's challenging the whole power structure in the Dragon Ball universe. He's not content to just join the Z fighters. He wants to be recognized as the Alpha Saiyan.
Almost like he needs to prove himself constantly. Maybe to like overcome those early feelings of rejection,
Possibly. And that brings up a really interesting point. How do you reconcile that need for validation with his brutality?
Right. Because he's this mix of pride and aggression, but then there are these moments of what almost seems like compassion. He fights with the Z fighters against Frieza, Cell, even Majin Buu, but he's also got his own agenda, which puts him at odds with them.
It's what makes him so interesting to analyze. You can't predict him. Is he going to be the destroyer, or will he have one of those surprising moments of selflessness?
And when he fights, it is nothing like Goku. He doesn't want a fair fight. He wants to dominate. That fight with Cooler, broken bones, shattered ribs, just brutal.
It's violence taken to the extreme.
Yeah.
And it's easy to condemn him for it, but you got to consider the context, right? I mean, his whole planet was destroyed. He lost his family. Frieza was always this looming threat.
So it's like all that pain, all that rage, it became part of his fighting style. He's not just trying to win. He's trying to, I don't know, exercise his demons, maybe?
Yeah, and yet there were these little moments, where you see something else, like in the Buu saga, when he steps up to protect the Earth. It reminds you that even with all that darkness, there's something noble in there somewhere.
It makes you wonder what could have been, you know? If he hadn't been exiled, if Planet Vegeta hadn't been blown up, would he still be this force of destruction?
Right, it's the classic nature versus nurture debate. But that's what makes Escanor's story so fascinating. He defies categorization. Destroyer and protector all rolled into one.
He's always pushing his power further, too. Through the Super Saiyan ranks, right? He even achieved Super Saiyan 4, and then there's Ultra Ego, where he taps into this insane level of power, but it seems like there's a price to pay for that.
Yeah, Ultra Ego, it's not just about strength. It's about surrendering to chaos in a way, embracing destruction as power, almost like he becomes the very thing he hates.
But does that make him a villain? Or is it more complicated than that? Is he a victim of circumstance, pushed to these extremes by everything he's been through?
And it makes you think, about power itself. Can it ever really be controlled? Or will it always corrupt?
It's like he holds up a mirror to the dark side of science. The pride, the aggression, that thirst for battle.
But there's also the potential for growth, for change, for breaking free of that cycle.
So where do we go from here? Is Escanor just doomed to succumb to the darkness, or can he use that power for good?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's why Escanor's story is so captivating. It just keeps challenging your expectations, makes you rethink everything about Saiyans and what it means to be powerful.
He's like walking a tightrope, right? And we're just holding our breath, waiting to see which way he'll fall, give in to the destruction, or find a way to resist.
Yeah, and it's not just a personal struggle either. It really plays into the bigger picture, those themes of the Dragon Ball universe, all those massive forces constantly clashing. You get your gods of destruction, your angels keeping things in balance. And then you got Saiyans like Escanor, who could really go either way.
It's like the big question about Saiyans, Are they warriors at their core, driven by battle and conquest? Or is there something deeper, that potential for compassion?
You gotta remember, this is a universe where planets get blown up like it's nothing. The stakes are insanely high. Escanor's choices could literally reshape galaxies.
Can someone with that much power ever really find peace? Can you ever escape the past, or is it always going to haunt you?
It's the tragic part of his story. He's constantly searching for validation, trying to prove his strength, but it's never enough. There's always another enemy to fight, another mountain to climb. It's tough to break free from that.
Especially with Saiyan culture, right? It's all about combat and conquest. It's like he's fighting his own nature.
Which takes us back to that question. Can all that power be used for good? Could he actually become a protector? A symbol of hope in a universe that's always on the verge of collapse.
That's something only Escanor can decide. But the fact that we even ask that question, that we see that possibility, it says a lot about him.
He's proof that even in a crazy universe with, superpowered beings, it's our choices that really matter.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. From exile to universe-shaking warrior, we dug into his motivations, his fights, his internal struggles.
It's been a wild ride.
And to all of you listening, what do you think about Escanor? Villain, anti-hero, something else entirely. Does his story make you question power, trauma, all that? Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, chime in, because we've only scratched the surface here. There's a whole lot more to uncover.
So keep digging, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep that spirit of adventure alive.